Hello there, and welcome to Sweet Child of Time. I'm your host, Steve Barnes. Hi, James. And today we are talking about the 1988 film Black Roses. This week I have two hosts. I have two very special sweeties with me. First off, you know him as the Marshland Monster. You know him as James McCollum. Here he comes. Ahoy there, James.
Ahoy, I'm also the original Sweet Child.
That's what I was going to say. It was on the tip of my tongue. You got it. He is the original Sweet Child. How does that feel to be like the first? You know what I mean?
I like lording it over your actual children.
Yes. And they lord it over me too. That I call you my man, my sweetie. But let's bring the other sweetie in. I couldn't be doing the podcast without her as well. We couldn't do a movie podcast without her. You know her as my dark friend, and she is what? The queen of Letterboxd. Here she comes from one of my stories, Lindsey Dunn. Ahoy, Lindsey.
Ahoy there, Steve and James.
Ahoy!
That's right. Meet James and Lindsey here, the first time they podcasted together. Are you guys scared about this arrangement?
No, we're professionals.
I'm here for one reason and one reason only, so that I can podcast with James.
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's why you agreed to this movie then, too, because you were like, I got to get in with this dude. Yeah, I don't blame you, because everybody wants to get in a podcast with James. Who's the last person you podcasted with, James, besides us?
Sean, this just a couple hours ago.
Oh, cool. Sean Marciniak. Okay. I've never podcasted with him.
Oh.
So you need to get me on a show with that guy so we can make that circle complete as well.
And also, Lindsey, if Nicole were here, she would say, hey, do not the first time meeting James say, I came here for the purpose to podcast with James, because he will ask you ad nauseum, hey, you want to guest on this podcast?
It's just our interests are so divergent. We found a couple of intersections, but I have to seize the opportunities when they come up. And I'm just curious if we'll find anything in common besides the fact that we know Steve.
Nick Cage, we sync up on.
Yes, Nicolas Cage and Reader's Theater.
And what about Powerpuff Girls?
Oh, no.
Okay, all right.
No.
Well, that disappoints me, Lindsey. I'm sorry to hear that. One thing you guys do have in common is I'm currently working on a song with both of you right now. And I don't know if y'all know this. I'm using the exact same drum beat for both songs, for the Sic Mundus Creatus Est with Lindsey and for Catfight with James and with Howard Kramer. Same beat, I just have it one song it's slowed down, the other song it's sped up. So I don't know if y'all realize that or not.
How would we realize that? We haven't heard both the songs.
Y'all don't have a mind meld going?
No.
I thought y'all did. Anyway, I want to ask you first, James. We're here for Black Roses, and this is a journey provided to us by Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast. He was the one who brought this movie to my attention. James, what I wanted to ask you was, how did you come across this movie, and what was your first impression of it?
It was either on Shudder or Troma Now, because this is distributed by Troma. I love Troma. And when you see the cityscape of Troma Team, which is how this movie started out, I can't hum the tune. There's a lot of stuff going on in that. But when you see that, if it's full screen, you know, oh, this will be a fun time. If it's 4:3 and looks a little grainy, possibly transferred from VHS, it's iffy, okay? It could be very fun, or it could just be boring, boring, boring. So I turned this on. There is a Bloodshot album called Black Rose. So I don't know if I'm assuming he has seen this movie and named it after that. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, read the synopsis. That sounds like a fun time. Watched it, I think last year or 2 years ago, and I had a blast. I love this movie.
Okay, you saw it as an adult. I was picturing you as like a 13 or 14-year-old little kid watching this.
I didn't watch movies until recently.
Okay, all right. And yeah, you're talking about like the opening, the production team like does their thing at the beginning of the movie. Something I've noticed, we've been watching a lot of indie films lately, and there's like 11 of those things in the beginning of every movie. You got to sit through all these animations of all the different production houses. Drives me nuts. But an aside is Lindsey, second here. You and I have never seen Black Roses before. So I wanted to ask you first off, I'll ask you what you thought of it in a second. But when was the last time you watched an intentionally bad movie, knowing it was bad, just for fun?
Oh, you told me to correct you if you started getting too negative. I don't think this was intentionally bad. There is production quality to this.
There is. Okay, for the listeners, I did ask James before the podcast started. I told him he has one job, in which is if myself or Lindsay get too down in the dumps about this movie or too negative, that he's going to correct our course. And thank you, James. So, Lynn, I'm going to rephrase my question. But yes, James.
Real quick. I will say the main character, Johnny, he is in a different movie. I think that is the thing that makes people go, does this suck? No, that person's just, there are times when it's like, does he think he's about to start doing a musical number? Because when he's on that street, doing Singing in the Rain, it's weird.
And there was a scene in the library that was like a Julie and Matt scene. And he was just kind of standing there in the background. Like, what are you doing there? Are you in the wrong scene right now? I'm not sure of what your purpose is. But yeah, we'll get to that. Lindsay, let me rephrase that question nicely.
How are you going to do that?
I don't know.
I can.
Let's find out. Yeah, James has an idea. Go for it.
When was the last time you watched a campy movie that is just there to entertain, not be highbrow, even though, sometimes they're trying to give moral questions. But I think that makes it even more campy. When was the last time you watched just a delightful campy movie?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like campy movies plenty. I kind of told you guys in our DM chat that I'm a fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000. So,
yes.
I often turn on such great classics as the Gamera episode. I really like that one. So, and the shorts of all of theirs. So that's kind of where I go for that. But I also like campy horror. I don't consider this campy. But
I think that the kid, Johnny's campy. Whatever. His acting style is just... every single time. It's also the dude's 28 playing like a 16-year-old, and I think that's the disconnect.
That's one of my notes too. And the fact that he does seem like he's going to break into song, not just at one point, but there's 3 different points where he's excitedly bebopping around, spinning around poles, and I don't know, just having a ball like Fred Astaire. And I was expecting the same thing too, James. Yeah, myself, I used to love movies like this, and I'm not sure how this got past me, because this was released in 1988. It was a video store release. And, I was really big into video stores at the time and renting VHS tapes. This was only released on VHS at the time. It did not get a theatrical release, unfortunately. And our pal Jason Kleberg, who used to work in a video store, he owns this movie on VHS, and he was kind enough to share with me a screenshot of the back of the copy. So here's what it says on the back. It says about this movie, Black Roses, for the listeners: turn up the volume, turn down the lights, but don't watch alone. You are about to find out everything your mother told you about rock and roll is true.
Yeah.
When the sleepy town of Mill Basin is invaded by the sleazy band of hard rockers, the Black Roses, the self-righteous town people try to stop the concert series. When the band finally overcomes parental objections, a town full of normal Midwestern kids begins to turn bad, all caps. Bloodshed, riots, and horrible mass murders assail defenseless Mill Basin. Their police department doesn't even carry guns. The kids turn into monsters before your very eyes. And at the bottom, in all caps, the special effects are fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So, there you have it from the makers themselves.
I love how they completely omit who you'll be traveling along with. It doesn't say, and it's only up to local English teacher, Mr. So-and-so, to save the day.
That's right.
So that's why I watched it. That's why yes, James was going to be there, but was going to be on the podcast. But also I thought, I actually do read carefully. If I'm going to watch something, I would have to have some kind of hook.
Sure.
And the reviews I read were admitting that there was some cheesiness to it, some bad special effects, but they were like, hey, there's good points being made about censorship and the satanic panic period. And I thought, well, you know what? That sounds interesting. The small conservative town and the English teacher saves the day. I'm into this idea. Now, I'll let you know how I thought the execution was of all that, but and we'll have to talk about those special effects soon and if they were awesome or not. But yeah, I thought I wanted to see how this English teacher overcame Satan. So I thought that sounded pretty good.
Yeah. My next note, as a matter of fact, is about this satanic panic, because there was the satanic panic of the 80s. People were scared of, music in general. The PMRC was big. But that was because of bands like Slayer, Pantera, Mayhem, Suicidal Tendencies, not because of hair bands like White Lion or like Black Roses. So I think that's one thing this movie got really wrong, or perhaps it got it right, because they were like, if a big scary like metal band like Slayer came to town, they'd be chased out. But if at first they present themselves as like a soft Bon Jovi type, then maybe that might be more accessible. And that actually, it worked, as we saw in the film. It absolutely worked like a charm.
Steve, what was the greatest trick the devil ever played?
Oh, convincing the world he didn't exist.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, King Cobra is the band that did a lot of the heavy lifting for the music in this movie. And I listened to some King Cobra, to hear what their music sounded like. And I'm happy to report it's just as bad. I mean, just as wonderful and campy as the music that we heard in this movie. I'm thinking that maybe they had a small, I'm thinking they were a band that didn't charge a whole lot for their music. And I think that might be why that they were chosen, because first off, I've never heard of King Cobra, and I'm an 80s hair metal guy, and this band slipped past me somehow. So this is where they've been. They've been hanging out with Black Roses and being their backup band. And a very able band. I'm not going to knock them. And a couple of the songs were bangers. I had a particular song that was my favorite. Did you guys have a favorite song from the film, first off? Lindsay first.
No, in fact, one thing I really wanted to do before our podcast, and I'm finding it difficult, is I wanted to find the actual lyrics to these songs so I could read some of them, because I think I think it's funny that this, what their first song they sang was a song about my hometown, and it sounds all cozy, like at the baseball park and all that. And I'm like, I wonder what the lyrics of this song really are. But I'm finding it hard to find any of the lyrics online. And I just looked at Black Roses, Paradise, We're on Our Way. It actually has the lyrics to Paradise City by Guns N' Roses in there, even though that's incorrect.
Okay. Just something to throw on there just to have a word count.
No, but I bet James has a favorite track.
I really liked that hometown one.
Okay,
that one was
right.
great. And then the main song, I will say the mix, I would have brought the vocals a little bit forward. It was hard to tell exactly what they were singing. So it was hard to to differentiate, oh, this is the one I like. On This Existed, patreon.com/MLM pod, Corey and I discussed a movie that I think you guys would enjoy much more. It stars Pia Sedora. It's so good, called Voyage of the Rock and Roll Aliens. It's very good, and it stars the band Rima, who was a new wave band at the time, and those songs hit. It's so good. They're catchy, and they're intentionally trying to make a B horror sci-fi musical. Okay. So they knew what they were doing on that and knew what it was going to be. And Pia Sedora, it fucking knocks it out of the park on all the vocals. So I wish these songs, and I wish there were more songs.
That's true. There's a playlist on YouTube that I found that has all these songs on it. So if you go to YouTube and look it up that way, because when I looked up the Black Roses movie, I happened upon the Black Roses playlist, which was all the songs in the movie, plus a couple songs that Carmen Appice did that didn't make it into the film, but have that same spirit, So I think you would like them just as well. I like the closing track when the credits were rolling. That was my favorite song, and I liked it so much that when Peacock shut it off, I had to turn it back on so I could finish listening to the song. It was a good one. Something about, I can't remember the lyrics, but something about the kids going wild, I believe, which makes sense with the movie. Before we get into the movie, James, you mentioned something about the sound. I noticed that too. I didn't notice it so much during the music, but I did notice that the sound production was a little lacking, I guess. I was hearing a lot of things like wind and traffic and dogs barking and just stuff like that in the background. This movie had a budget of $450,000.
I put down, it was especially in the classroom scenes, the boom operator their philosophy was set it and forget it. They were not walking around with the people, moving it to be like, oh yeah, this person's talking, now this person's talking. Got to make sure the mic's pointed at both of them when they talk.
Did you have anything you wanted to bring up before we start going into like our note-by-note recap?
Were you going to talk about the cast?
I can. I have all their names written down here, and I was eventually going to get to that. Yeah, start us off then, Lindsay.
Okay, well, just a couple things I wanted to mention about the cast.
Okay.
So, Mr. Morehouse, the teacher, the amazing English teacher,
yeah,
is John Martin, who was a really big soap opera actor.
Okay, I thought he was very handsome to like not have been in anything else.
Mm-hmm. Like I looked at his credits, and he's on a lot of soap operas, but nothing extremely notable. And then Ken Swalford played the mayor. Mm-hmm. And when I looked up his Wikipedia, it said because of his signature red hair, he was often cast as a villain, which I was like, is that what they do with redheads? But Damien, our rocker, is played by Sal Viviano.
Cool name.
His credits were not that exciting to me, except for I did notice he was in an episode of Law and Order and played the role of reporter number 2.
Whoa.
Ah.
Yeah.
Not number 3.
The one that I was most excited about was Mrs. Miller, who is the school board president, I guess. Mm-hmm. Who's played by Julie Adams. And the first thing I saw was when I opened up her IMDb, it's got this gorgeous pinup black and white photo.
I saw that too.
Yeah, I thought, who's this chick? She looks amazing. And then I noticed she played a minor character named Amelia on the show Lost.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I was like, I don't remember this person.
I don't either.
And then if you go to the character Wikipedia or whatever for Lost, she is in the book club that Juliet holds when when her and Sawyer settle down for a little bit. Mm-hmm. She has a book club, and Amelia is in her book club.
So she's not an island person. Oh, yeah. Well, that's cool though.
She's one of the others, I guess, is what he says.
Oh.
But more notable is that she plays the main character from Creature from the Black Lagoon. Okay, the main character is really the creature, but she's the beauty that seduces the creature. And so I was like, wow, that's such an iconic movie. I love that movie. I wouldn't have recognized her at all, but she's the one doing all the fear mongering amongst the parents in that town scene. So
I'm a big Creature from the Black Lagoon fan, and this just came out, the Creature from the Black Lagoon comic book. And it's first issue, it's a strong star. I'm pumped for it. I think it's going to be like 4 maybe total.
Okay. Well, James, that's another thing we have in common now. So have you read the Lady from the Black Lagoon?
I have not.
Okay. It's all about the woman, the artist that created the creature, but because she was a female, she wasn't given any credit for
I know about her because of like YouTube videos when they talk about like special effects. A lot of people in horror will like credit her, and it's like, yeah, man, she was fucking great.
Mm-hmm. They should be crediting Julie Adams too, because without the female Julie Adams, the Creature of the Black Lagoon would have just stayed in the lagoon and nobody would have known. So it's because of her that he emerged. So without her, there'd be no him.
If I'm remembering the movie correctly, I think it's because of colonialism he emerged.
I think it's a love story. I think I have my own version in my mind, James, that I'm happy with.
I think he definitely wouldn't have gone back to the States and eventually evolved into a man, only to, spoilers for the third movie, wound up walking back into the ocean to be like, is he gonna evolve back to have gills? We don't know.
Well, that's a dream of mine to walk into the ocean. I love this. I gotta check this movie out.
Okay,
Number 3. Okay, I'll write that down.
I don't know if you mean like it's a dream of yours to walk into the oceans and get gills or to walk into the ocean.
Whatever happens.
Okay, all right.
I was hoping the kids in the movie, the teenagers, I could look at their credits and go, oh, they went on to do these all other great things, but they didn't. They didn't. So.
They were already adults that lived their lives by the time this movie was filmed.
It is wild. If this were made today, it would be like 2 or 3 teens that were following along who aren't corrupted by this, as well as a teacher, instead of just, this is a movie made for teenagers to rent at the movie store, and we're following around a middle-aged teacher. The kids don't want that.
Teachers want that, though. I mean, maybe there's more adults in the world than kids because it takes 2 adults to make 1 kid. So all the adults are loving this. They Histy Vendied Matt, and you know this. Histy Vendied Julie Adams as well at the PTA meeting because she was talking about how this band was bad news. And I mean, she was definitely right.
It is kind of wild to think about the fact that, okay, I was thinking, okay, the teacher's gonna save the day, everything can return to normal. But I was like, no, these kids legitimately killed people.
Yeah.
So what kind of normalcy is there going to be in this town? So that was, as it unfolded, I was finding it hard to process and believe that this was the movie they gave. So it does make me curious when you say that, James. It's like, yes, who is this movie made for exactly? Who's the intended audience?
A stoned 31-year-old in 2022.
I think that's right. I think that's correct. Because you think you think some of the kids are, especially Johnny. He seems like from the beginning, they played this victory music when he shows up and he's all handsome and he's got his hair cut. So you think he's going to save the day and Julie's going to be by his side. And
okay, real quick, listeners, he just has hair. He doesn't have his hair cut. Like, we don't see him get a haircut. I don't know why that's what Steve glommed onto.
I mean, I don't know. I'm digging their attributes. I was looking at a lot of haircuts. What I like to do, James, when I watch a movie like this that's made in 1988, not that's based in 1988, but that's actually made at that time. I love looking at their hairstyles, their clothes, the way they carry themselves. And I always try to picture them like as a modern person. And I was like picturing Matt as like a Paul Rudd type. And in my mind, I was like taking his weird hair and giving him like a Paul Rudd haircut, giving him like, more cool facial hair instead of that mustache he's got going. I was doing the same thing with Johnny. I was like, if Johnny was like, a student like he should be, he should have, probably long hair, maybe that's, I don't know, or a bob kind of deal. Now I'm thinking perhaps, am I off base here?
Okay, well, if we're going to talk about hair, okay,
Yes.
Can we talk about the fact that Damien / Saul Viviano, that's not his real hair. He's wearing a wig, and the kids still think that's okay?
I had a question too, because like when Matt went to talk to that guy.
Yes.
Was that Damien?
Yes, that was him.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering that too. Like everybody saw him.
I thought maybe it was their manager.
Me too.
Same.
But it was, no, that was him. And I'm like, well, why is this is, I was like, whoa. As James would say, I would hear him go, whoa, okay. That's not even your real hair. Can you actually consider yourself to be a rock and roll artist or a heavy metal artist that you're wearing a wig? Hey, you don't have to have long, luscious hair.
Exactly.
Even though this is the 80s. But to wear a wig seems completely fake and not in the rocker, lifestyle.
And then he's got 2 wigs. He's got his manager wig, and then he's got his long hair guy wig. Because spoiler alerts, but we see later on he has absolutely no hair on his head. So that means he has to change wigs to like be different Damiens. The on stage Damien, the casual Damien, and then like the real Damien.
Hey, that's Nicole in a handbag or whatever the expression is.
Right,
She's got
that's
a
right.
wig for like, hey, this is me at a family outing. She has
Correct.
a wig for,
That's right.
this is me at work. This is a wig for me tabling at a convention. And this is a wig for, I don't know, when I just want to be pretty.
I think it's different for certain cultures and it's certainly different for women. Like for a rocker guy to like be a phony long hair guy. I think in 1988 that was definitely a sin. I mean, generally if you see a cool long hair guy and then you know later on he's wearing a wig, like you kind of look at him weird after that. But the whole point of this movie is this whole town is possessed. So they're like under Damien's spell, Lindsay. So I mean I think that's the excuse here. It's like the kids are like, Damien's got a wig. We all want wigs now.
I think they don't know he has a wig until he pulls it off, and then they're fine with it. But once he turns into a demonoid, they're like, oh, ugh.
When he was manager Damien, remember, Julie was in the vicinity. She was like, eyeball, because she was like, she and Matt were like, what are you doing here to each other?
Yes.
So she knew he had short hair and she's like popular. So she's probably spreading the word to everybody. Like, oh, Damon's hair like is a wig, but underneath it's even cooler. Because he did have pretty cool, like, wavy hair, like as a manager.
To anybody who wears wigs. It was just more about the fact that
rocker.
In the 80s, a rocker. Yes. Like nobody has to have long hair, but if you're going to have it, you should have real hair.
I think from Nicole has alopecia. I don't know if you knew that, but I think she would see this and be like, yeah, I would applaud them, because then they don't have to do their hair every single night. It's just that is set. Maybe I need to tweak it a little bit.
You need to tweak it. Yeah.
There it is. And then if I need to go out and look presentable, I have another wig. It's just time management, guys.
Okay, I can dig that. All right. Yeah, I'm still thinking about the timing there, 1988. Jeez. And you had guys like Rob Halford and Rudolph from Accept, very short-haired, square-looking dudes that were rockers. So Damien could have done it. But and speaking of Nicole, hey, hell yeah.
I saw the top of it, so I knew you were wearing her shirt.
She's still sending me stickers, James. Like for the past 2 months, she's still been sending me stuff.
Wait,
like,
are you not on the thing anymore?
No, she's just...
someone's no longer gonna find them because I will be telling.
Well, I mean, I'm telling you for a reason. I mean, I know that she knows because we've talked about it. But
okay.
But yeah, I was still getting stickers. I'm like, Nicole's a sweetie. She's still sending me stickers. This is great.
I thought it's a clerical error.
Maybe it is. God damn it. Why'd I have to say? I want my free stickers. Okay, we're going to go into the movie note by note now since we've already done our thing. So watching Black Roses, I was a little confused because the very first thing that we see when we start this movie, besides like the opening street shots, is we see a monster band on stage playing, very monstrous, very scary. And there's a crowd going wild. We see some police come in and they're like going to stop the concert. Next thing you know, zombies are running amok. And that's like a 2-minute intro to this movie. Immediately we have a crowd of zombies going crazy.
And it rules.
Ghouls, excuse me, not zombies.
No, it rules.
Oh, okay. I thought you were correcting my terminology.
No, I don't care about zombies, ghouls. Unless they're come from a toilet, then I will say they're ghoulies.
Okay, fair enough.
What were we supposed to make of the gentleman who is watching at the door? I didn't understand him. When you see him, he's kind of looking like he's very excited about the concert. But then when those police interrupt, he turns around and he has a horrified look in his face. So is he horrified at the police? Or is that like are we supposed to be saying, oh, this guy was possessed because he looked like he liked the music, but he actually was horrified but couldn't express it?
I think he has been possessed.
I'm going to go with that too. I was also confused. I was like, I think they just wanted something to happen to like catch our attention here. And that's what they did.
This was filmed after all the actual filming had occurred. So it might have been like, we need a stronger opening. So let's kind of just do this.
This is later referred to by Damien when he's talking as Damien manager. He talks about how the band has been in one town and it didn't go well, and he doesn't really say much about it. And obviously this is that time. But quickly we transition to the very cool cars that pull into town. We see the very cool guys get out and stand up next to their cars. I was blown away. Any notes about these fellas before we get going?
Yeah, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a man in a Ferrari to enter the gates of heaven, because it's like Mackinac Island, no cars allowed.
All right. I don't get it, but I love it.
Yeah, because you don't know what the Upper Peninsula is.
You got me. You got me. Barely even been there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you barely even knew Michigan was a peninsula. You know,
It's a mitten. Okay?
Yeah,
it's
and
a
it's still
mitten.
it's a peninsula too.
Wow. Okay.
A mitten
geography
can also
lesson.
be a peninsula. Okay.
All right.
While we're admiring all the cars, I want to say I really liked this whole scene because it's cut with it's like a breakfast scene with a family. So you have the evil rockers getting out of the car.
Sure.
They give each other evil looks of, yes, we're now ready to give mayhem. And they nod at each other. And then they begin to hand out flyers in the town. And that's the evil that they are going to wreck, is handing out those flyers. And in the meantime, we see a family, I believe it might be Julie's family. And they are just having a normal breakfast as a family. And the music for this is this heroic Breakfast of Champions type of music that is cut in here. So just, I really, besides the awesome Black Roses music, we also are subjected to a very weird score that often goes through highs and lows and different emotional timbers, within moments of each other. So
especially when Matt's on screen, we get a lot of that with Matt for some reason. One thing that Julie's parents were right about, besides like the whole, demon thing, you shouldn't take vinyl records to school. I don't know what Julie was thinking, trying to take a vinyl album to school. It's a bad idea. It'll definitely get messed up and it might get warped.
Yeah,
So-
they were like, "Oh, what's this cover? What's this album art?" And she's like, "It's just a record cover, Mom." This opening scene of just like family eating, the best horror movie to be like, oh wow, this feels like a real family eating is Critters. Oh my God, the first Critters, the opening with the just family sitting down. It is so cozy and it makes you feel like, oh yeah, these people have known each other their entire lives.
Okay, Critters 1. Got to put that on the list there, Lindsay. That's what we're watching next for the next Sweet Child of Time.
Critters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the
just
web
for
series.
the opening breakfast scene.
It's Critters 1 is a classic. The other ones with caveats, but first one, perfect movie.
It's kind to provide the caveats for us. All right, we also see Johnny's home life. Looks like his dad pretty much ignores him a lot. And I think we see another kid doing their thing. But really, who we're going to meet here is Matt, the cool English teacher. And one thing I really admire about Matt is he does the circle formation with his classroom when they have a classroom discussion. I've always been a big fan of that. I've always liked when I had a classroom like that. I never liked the little lines where you're looking at the back of somebody's head. Circles are the way to go. So you can relate with the kids. I kind of we just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood recently, Lindsay, and I was thinking this is my new Cliff Booth. I'm liking this this Matt character. Does everybody loves Matt, right? He's made to be loved.
Yeah.
I mean, he's okay, but I don't know why this girl has a crush on him, because I was not a favor of his cardigan that hung over his paunchy belly. But apparently he gets the kids in lively conversation. Like you said, he calls the quorum. He's got interesting quotes by Walt Whitman, such as "Evil propels me." He wants to know what they have to say. So, I mean, that's lovely. They like having these discussions with him, so I think he's a good teacher, but I wasn't sure what was so cool about him.
I think it's just his casual approach.
Yeah.
I think it's the circle. I think it's the circle.
Also, teens love cornflakes. And later on in the movie, he wears a sweater that makes him look like Tony the Tiger.
He does. He does have that orange striped sweater. I took note of that too.
One thing about this, it's a classic horror movie trope. You'll see it in, for sure, Halloween. You see it in, I believe, Nightmare on Elm Street, where in class, usually in English class, whatever subject they are teaching is always the theme of the movie. They hint at it. This one they take a baseball bat and they're like, oh, do you understand? And they're just hitting it over the head.
Yeah, there was a speech about being curious. And yeah, I mean, that actually, I knew there was going to be a classroom scene. And I always love in classic horror, the classroom scene. Steve, they did the same thing in Dark when Bartosz and Franziska and Jonas and all those guys are hanging out and talking about black holes at the very beginning of the movie. So I always loved those scenes, but yes, it was, and then these continue throughout the movie, right?
Yes. But this first one, though, is when the kids figure out that adults are hypocrites. This is like a big discovery to these high school kids. Like, whoa, I didn't know adults were such hypocrites. I figured it out at a much earlier age. I was like 7 or 8. And this is when we lived in our first apartments that we lived in before my mom got remarried. And I was having some Cheerios for breakfast. There was a bag of those little powdered donuts on the counter. I wasn't allowed to have those. My mom's getting ready for work. She grabs a donut. She's eating a donut. I'm like, can I have one of those donuts? She's like, no, you can't have any sugar for breakfast. And I was like, she's a fucking hypocrite. I did not like that one bit. I gave her the finger behind her back. That's a true story.
Dang.
So that's when I realized that adults, I'm getting upset thinking about this, are hypocrites.
Damien ain't got nothing on you, Steve.
Yeah, I tell you.
You're punk rock, and that's your real hair.
100%. This 3-inch
guys, he
hair
tugged
is
on
all
it,
mine.
and it moved real hard.
Lindsay, did you ever have a big moment like that when you figured out that the world's not fair, or adults are hypocrites, or your parents suck?
Well,
That's a loaded question.
I don't know if I agree that with the overall theme that, I mean, people are hypocrites. People can be hypocritical, but I don't think it's just adults.
No, of course not.
So I'm not sure. I'm not really sure how to answer this question. So
okay.
I know that certain individuals were, I don't have a story about it that I can call to mind. So maybe James will have one, and then I can think about it while he's telling his.
Well, hold on. I'm waiting on Caleb to message me back so he can tell me when he realized his parents were hypocrites.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Okay, well, we can move on then. I put the question out there just thinking you guys might have something. That's fine.
I think my parents were very forward about what they did as teens. Like, my dad would say, like, yeah, I used to smoke pot, but like, it wasn't until I was an adult. And I think you should, like, if you want to make that choice, do it as an adult, but don't now. So I think my parents might not have been hypocrites.
Okay.
In the grand
I was raised
scheme.
in the South, so it's a different story.
I mean, I guess like my mom, before she like got better and got medicated, when she got angry was like upset that I would just like all of a sudden fly into a ball of rage, she'd be like, oh, she spanks me. And it's like, but Mom, you do that. This is why I do this. I got this disease from you.
Sure, yeah. You should be spanking her when she has a freak out.
Yeah.
That's right.
Instead of cowering upstairs with my sister saying, Mom might come up here and kill us.
I think what I would say is more that people often have rules for not a good reason. Is one thing I can say, is that a lot of times you put a guideline in place such as, oh, my child shouldn't be eating sugar. But it's not really, you don't have a good reason for doing that. And almost the rule itself becomes more important than the reason.
Yes.
So, like at the library, for instance, there's like, oh, we need to charge late fees so people will return their books, stuff like that. So I could probably, but I don't have any specific example. But the whole point of this movie is the kids are upset because their parents are saying, you can't listen to this music. It's bad music. And the parents have just decided it's bad. Nobody else has a say. And the teacher is just saying, okay, your parents aren't trying to be jerks. They feel that this is harmful, and he's trying to the teacher is trying to bridge this gap between the kids and the adults and say, okay, how can I present this to the kids so that they won't be super rebellious to their parents, but they'll kind of understand, is what I got out of that scene. And I can't agree that sometimes adults have dumb rules. Like my dad would, okay, well, I'll tell you one thing that it's not really a hypocrite, but it's just
Here we go.
it doesn't really show a good reasoning is my dad would often be like, oh, if you have 2 liter of soda, in the table, and if you wanted the soda, it's like, oh, I have to pour it for you, so because you would spill it. And then my dad actually picked up the 2 liter and spilled it himself. But
spilly.
It was because he didn't want me to spill it, but he spilled it, and then he was very upset about himself. But I was like, see, you did the same thing, Dad. Maybe I would have been more careful because I didn't want to get in trouble. So I thought that was funny, but I didn't laugh at the time because I didn't want to be spanked.
You didn't give him the finger.
No, that is not respectful, Steve.
I was respectful to her face. Just behind her back is when I'd be a little shit.
Caleb said that he just messaged me the same exact sentence.
Well, speaking of the parents, we're going to skip to the parents now because the parents are having a PTA meeting right now talking about this crazy rock and roll band, Black Roses. And the school has already approved their approval. So they're already in. They're already going to be performing. But the parents are kind of protesting here. And I got to say, the mayor is like the coolest guy in the room besides Matt, because the mayor reminds everybody, remember when you used to do the hanky-panky lady? And like he reminded them all these old ass tropes they used to do as rock and roll kids. And so they kind of get on the mayor's side, like, yeah, it's just rock and roll. We'll give these guys a chance, in spite of being like the naysayers they are.
One of the examples, he pointed at a guy and said, hey, remember when your son grew his hair a little long and the entire town wanted to take him to task? That he wasn't evil, was he? And he's like, no, yeah, my son's cool. No, yeah, I guess you're right.
That was me they were talking about. Yeah, grew my hair a little bit long.
I was the person I feel like PTA meetings were talking and discussing about. This kid's is clearly a Satanist. What are we going to do about him?
You mean you're the kid, right?
Yeah, I'm the kid that they were talking about.
Yeah, that's one of my questions later on. But yeah, let's bring it up now. Let's talk about ourselves.
I'm sorry. We need to go back actually to something that happened in the classroom that I forgot to mention.
What's up?
Okay, yeah, sure.
The kids were saying stuff like, the Black Roses could have picked to perform anywhere, but they picked our town. This is the most important thing that's happened to us ever. And I thought that was funny because it's like, all right, did you guys think about why they might have picked this town? Why they picked Mill Basin out of all the towns? Maybe that should make you a little suspicious. They said they could have picked anywhere. I'm like, yeah, exactly. And they picked your silly town. So I thought that was...
I would have been so psyched too if I was one of these kids and my favorite rock band was coming to little old Henrico, Virginia. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, as a kid, you probably don't think about things like that. Well, maybe this is their practice tour, or maybe they're trying to get their shit together before they really go on the road. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there's a lot of town pride happening in these kids. Maybe they're football kids and they're all gung-ho about Mill Basin.
Yeah, and it didn't click until you said it that they were performing at the school. That's the weirdest thing. And it wasn't like my school, Reese Puffer High School, they had a very beautiful theater that they had for performances. If you were to be like, oh yeah, we're going to a place, oh, it's at a high school, this is going to be weird. Then you sit down, you're like, oh, it feels like we're at a theater right now. It wouldn't feel odd, but this one was odd.
Yeah, I'm raising my hand here because I have it later in my notes as well. Yeah, we're jumping ahead.
How do we know it's the school?
Oh, because they show the outside shot of the school before the concert, and all the kids are going in, and every time they go in and out of the concert, it's the same school auditorium. I'll save my story for later. But what I wanted to ask you guys before that was, so these were all kids, and these kids in Mill Basin are all very easily swayed by the devil. Every single one of them fell for it. So they're all pretty... I'm going to try to be nice, James. They're all just very persuadable. So yeah, I'm going to start with Lindsay. What kind of high school student were you at this time? If you were in Matt's class, not in Matt's class, but yeah, what kind of kid were you in about the age of 16?
Well, I was the perfect student, of course.
Hell yeah, that's what I want to hear.
I got good grades. I was in drama club, choir, all kinds of stuff. And I loved high school. It was a great time. My school had lots of opportunities. We had a planetarium at our high school. We had a giant theater. It's been renovated a lot now. It's even fancier than it was. They have like a sound booth and, a nice spring-loaded dance floor for professional dancing and stuff. So
yeah,
it was a big school, but I loved English language, those classes. I would have been right in there, answering questions for Mr. Morehouse despite his odd wardrobe. I would have been discussing the questions. I liked the teachers that made me think and didn't give me easy answers. So I would have been right in there with Mr. Morehouse. I don't know if I would be like Julie with a crush on him, but
teacher's pet.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like in my yearbook, or like when you look at somebody's yearbook, especially their senior yearbook, there's like a list of like all their credits after their name, like all the clubs that they were in, all the sports they participated in. So it sounds like your name, Lindsey Dunn, was probably followed by a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Well,
Drama
I was on
club.
the yearbook staff, so
so there you go.
But I didn't have as many as some people, because the yearbook is not just full of clubs, it's also candid shots. And so I wasn't as popular as some people. So I don't have as many as some people, but I did have quite a few clubs and activities that I joined in on. And yeah, high school was a great time. I kind of miss it sometimes. Like, you met a lot of people, got to have different classes each semester, new teachers, and yeah.
I don't miss it. I got to tell you. I mean, I miss some of my friends, of course, and like I met my best friends at school. For myself, I don't think I was a bad kid. I didn't get into a lot of trouble, and I was certainly respectful, and I loved English class. I had like a very all my English teachers, but especially my 11th grade English teacher, were very influential, introduced me to a lot of books. But if you look at like I was saying, like your yearbook stats in your senior year, like mine just said Steve Barnes Photography Club. That's all it said, because I didn't do anything in high school. I barely graduated. I mean, I did fairly okay, but I never studied outside of school. I never took any projects seriously. Never took anything too seriously. I was a music guy and I was a skateboard guy. So I was more into getting out of school as quickly as possible, getting my homework done as quickly as possible so I could go skate or go to a show or just go to somebody's house. I wasn't troubled, but there was potential for trouble there, because there was some pot going on. There was some alcohol going on, but it didn't interfere in the school hours. But, you might say I wasn't a Johnny, but there was plenty of kids in the class that were not saying anything, but they were kind of like, just kind of there in the background. You're kind of not sure about them. That was me. And you, James, how about yourself? How were you in high school?
I was pretty much this, but just angry and more depressed.
Yeah. Were you like angry at other people, or were you internally angry?
I think like 9th grade to 10th grade, it was like I was angry at God. Then I was just angry at myself. And then senior year, I think it was just like kind of default. I had like a girlfriend throughout my senior year. And then it was a long-term girlfriend. So I think by senior year, I was kind of chill. And I had like a French class, 3 English classes, which were I had a mystery lit class, a Lord of the Rings class, student publications, and then one other that I always forget.
That sounds fun.
So mass media, which was taught by Tim Allen's brother. So
nice.
I like my senior year was just a breeze. I would go there, get all my stuff done, never did homework. I was like, if you want me, I'll do schoolwork. I will never do homework. So during lunch, I was just like, get it done as quickly as possible. Got straight A's that year. Oh, and I had a first aid class. And then
nice.
that was it.
Okay. Oh, so like you're talking about why did you have 3 Englishes? Was that by choice?
The only thing I was required to do was get an English credit, and I needed to fulfill my PE credit, but I'm like, I'm not doing, no. So I did first aid and CPR, things that like, oh, this is stuff I can actually use.
Oh, there you go. That's why the first aid.
Yeah. And then all of my books I could just fit in my pockets because they were a mystery lit book and a Lord of the Rings book. And then you
could fit that in your pocket? A Lord of the Rings book?
It was like a small,
this big.
It was like this. Oh, but I had, I like wore Jinko jean stuff. So like I had deep
we could
pockets.
put a skateboard in those things.
Uh-huh.
Jinko jeans.
Uh-huh.
I'll need to look this up. Yeah,
Oh,
I was gonna
these?
ask about the pockets too. I was like, wait a second, what kind of pockets were these?
Heather and myself went through a Jinko's phase at Applebee's as well. Hell yes.
And just cargo pants that I would specifically make sure I had deep pockets, and I would fold everything up into perfect little rectangles, all of my like papers. So then I could just put them in there. And a big thing, I had lockers, but I didn't know how to do a locker combination.
Those are tricky.
But I was like, nah, I'm never going to learn this, so there's no sense in going. Why would I go to my just either all in a backpack or all in my pockets? But yeah, I was just like, I would go to school, come home, make beats for 4 hours, forget to eat dinner, get yelled at by my parents for forgetting to eat dinner again. There would be times I'd hear the door, like the garage door start to open, or they would like text me, hey, we're coming home. And I'd be like, quickly, so they don't get mad.
Aw. They love you. They loved you. They wanted you to eat.
Our little James has got to eat his dinner.
I think that was more so like you're obligated to do that. Also, there was a stretch of, you probably know this, Steve, a stretch of high school where my brother was in a rehab where it was like inpatient, outpatient. So every single night they would be hosted by another family of a child who was also in the program. So the thing was, the family also had to work the program. So I would go from Muskegon, Michigan, all the way to Detroit, all the way across the state every single Friday to pick up my brother. So like that dictated a lot of my high school going, I think from like 9th to 10th grade. So, and you know, like I biked everywhere.
Same.
And
yeah.
in like 11th and 12th grade, I hitchhiked everywhere.
Yuck. Yeah, you talked about that on another podcast. I agree with who was it? M. Nance, or who gave you a lot of shit about that, and I agree. You should not have been doing any hitchhiking, James.
No, hitchhiking
not in the 2000s.
was fine. It was fine. Because also
Yeah.
a lot of the times it was like people I knew would like pass by and they'd be like, James, why are you in shorts in the middle of winter in Michigan? I was like, I run hot, guys. And then they're like, do you want, like I went back home in October last year for a wedding, and friends of mine opened up a restaurant, and I went to the restaurant for the first time because they're only open seasonally. And they were like, oh man, we were just thinking about you because we saw someone hitchhiking, and we were like, man, remember James always hitchhiking?
That's not a good thing to be remembered by.
But at least they don't see that and they're like, oh, remember when James went hitchhiking and never came back? Like, at least there's a happy ending.
You're here with us now.
Yeah.
Happy ending.
Unlike a lot of these people in this movie.
That's right. Yeah, this has turned into an episode of This Existed. We better get back to this movie where the adults are definitely cooler than the kids because the adults know what's up. Let's see. What's our next scene here? Let's see. Let's go.
We were at the school board.
School board meeting is the next stop we were. I didn't have any more notes about that. Did you guys?
Nah.
I did not either. We see that Johnny is kind of teasing Julie here. But it seems like everybody is aware that, or everybody is suspicious that they're having some sort of emotional affair, because there's nothing physical happening with Julie and this guy, Matt, but everybody is teasing them, Johnny included. The whole school knows. Priscilla knows. That's some pretty bad stuff, right? 1988, even back then it was frowned upon, but it seemed like it was very commonplace, like the way that this is presented. I don't know, no notes.
Yeah, no notes. This was also written by a woman, which is pretty wild. In a good way. Like, I love seeing women writing horror movies. One of the best ones is Slumber Party Massacre. Yeah, she wrote it as like a parody of slasher movies, but then was just like the director just made it like a real slasher movie, which like makes it weird in a good way. But Always love seeing a woman scribe a horror movie.
I mean, I think it's pretty common for girls to have a crush on their teacher, but it was weird that she goes, Mr. Morehouse and I are just friends. And I'm like, no. No, he's not your friend. He's your teacher. You cannot be friends with a teacher. You can think a teacher is cool, but you're not friends with your teachers. I thought that was a wild line.
No, okay. I think they are friends, as well as with Johnny and that other dude with like jet black hair, but like cut short. Because
yellow tank top.
When the teacher goes home and he like, oh, gonna turn on this classical music, and he sits down, cracks a beer, then looks on his wall fondly at a picture of him and those three students, just like as if this were an SNL photo. And it's like, what the why? That is weird for you to have, not in like a creepy way, just like, when was this photo taken and when was it developed and when did you frame it and hang it on your wall? But it's also kind of cute.
It'd be weird if I had a picture of like me, you, and the three of us hung on my wall. That would be weird. And
Don't
you know,
you, Steve? One of your doctored photos?
You paid Nicole to draw us.
little cutesy pie versions. But yeah, this is the part of the movie too. I'm going to get back to the movie where Johnny is doing his dance routine through town because he's like gleefully like teasing Julie. Decides he wants to literally paint the town red. So he grabs a can of red paint that's already been open at one point because it's got spill marks on it. Decides to paint the road. I'm not sure what he was going to accomplish there, but they get run off by Matt, and, you know, Matt immediately knows what's up. He sees the can of paint. He sees the knife. He's like, it's Johnny's knife, that little bastard. The can of paint is possessed too because it catches on fire. That was like our first clue that there's some weird stuff happening in town. That paint just combusted. That's interesting. At night.
Yeah, I could imagine during the daytime, but at night?
At night.
But if it combusts during the daytime, that's a lawsuit because I just painted my house.
Or the road. I just painted this nice sidewalk.
I wasn't sure what he was doing. It looked like to me like he did put something in the can of paint, and I thought it was supposed to explode, and then Mr. Morehouse was going to get injured because he's like, let me investigate this can of paint. And then he leaned over, but no, everything was fine. It just became a nice candle or a lantern there in the night, you know, making some light. But I thought Mr. Morehouse was going to have a near accident. And then, of course, there was, Damien lurking in the shadows by the school fence or whatnot. So that was very atmospheric.
He just drops a The Works bomb in there. Do you guys know what that is?
No,
I'm
I do
not
not.
sure, James. Tell us about it.
I don't. Do you post on YouTube these videos?
Oh, yeah, the audio, yes.
Okay, YouTube okay, there's a way in which to make something go boom by using a cleaning product and crumpled up metal that is thin, and then you put it in a 1 liter bottle. I was using that toilet bowl cleaner at our work, and immediately I was like, it's because it's that brand, it's the specific brand. I flashed to my childhood making those, throwing them, and just hoping and praying it would explode, and oh boy, it always did.
I mean, I'm going to give Johnny the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was going to blow up a can of paint, and that was going to in turn like cover the entire town.
Paint it red.
So, that's right. Well, his plan went to crap, and instead, next day we're at school.
But Steve, you seem to be insinuating that the can of paint lit on fire by itself. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
That's how it looked to me.
That's how it looked to me as well.
So did Johnny just open a can of paint and then leave it? I mean, I don't understand what he was trying to do.
They got scared off by when Matt showed
Morehouse.
up. Yeah. They saw somebody. They didn't know it was him, but they saw somebody coming. They ran off real quick.
There's also a marquee on the side of a building. I think it's like at a bar, and it says, yup, it's the Nada Cup.
Really? Does it say that?
Yeah, this is Canada, baby.
All right, baby. I saw awful lot of denim, so I figured we were in Canada. But yeah, the next day in class, Johnny's given his knife back by the teacher in a really kind of subtle way to let Johnny know that the teacher knows what's up. So Johnny gets a little nervous about that. Johnny takes these classroom discussions very seriously. And my first watch through, I was like, kind of like wondering, like, why does he get so worked up? Now, second watch through, I was like, Matt sure picks on Johnny a lot. He focuses on Johnny when he knows Johnny doesn't know the answer and forces Johnny to come up with an answer to kind of embarrass him in front of the class. So I'm kind of blaming Matt a little bit for calling on Johnny consistently.
I don't think it's to embarrass him. I think they're clearly best friends. He has a framed photo of him.
Yeah.
So I think he's like, you could be so much more. And I think that's also the case. Like Johnny is saying, my mom left my dad because, he wasn't going to be shit. I won't do that. And Matt's doing that. He's like, yes, be more. That's why I push you.
Like a good teacher should. All right. I'm down with that. Like I said, I love English teachers. I had an 11th grade English teacher that blew the class's mind and myself as well by suggesting the premise. We were reading D.H. Lawrence, The Rocking Horse Winner, and she suggested the premise that mothers don't have to love their kids. She presented this in such a way that the whole class was like beside themselves, especially Catherine McClure. Catherine was all like, a mother has to love her child. That child came from her. Catherine was very traditional. A mother has to love her child. And our teacher, Miss Huffman, was like, not necessarily. I mean, people can fall out of love, like hate can occur, or indifference, depression. And this was all brand new to all of our little, 10th grade ears, 11th grade ears. I just remember that as a very specific moment, I guess because the whole class was kind of stunned, and I went home and thought about it like, maybe my mom doesn't have to love me. That's weird. I bring that up because I was going to ask you guys another round of questions. Was there any situations? I mean, I know you liked English, both of y'all like English class. Do y'all remember any times in English class where you had a teacher that presented you with something that kind of blew your mind?
I'm sure there are some. This is why I was supposed to think about these questions in advance.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Right, Steve?
That's right. Well, I wrote this question down. I sent it to y'all. So
the opposite happened.
Oh,
my
okay.
11th grade teacher, as I said, Satanist. I wore that proudly on me, but not in hey, I want everyone to convert, or it's just, if everyone else gets to wear their religious stuff, so can I.
Okay.
But everyone's like, he's going to harm us. But no. My 11th grade teacher, English, Miss, she told me after I graduated that teachers will come in thinking I have no prejudice towards children. I'm going to be open with all of them no matter what, until you get that kid where that challenges that. And I was that kid for her. In 10th grade, she would see me and I hope when 11th grade rolls around, he is not in my class. That would be worse. And then that happened. I got in her class and she's like, oh, what am I going to do? And then realize once I come in, I'm just like, hey guys, how are you? And then she's like, oh, fuck. I fucked up. And she told me how other teachers, how they had to experience that as well. As she wasn't alone in this. And she's like, so I hope that she's wrote this. Maybe I shouldn't be saying. She wrote an essay about it and showed me it. She's like, I think, you're graduated. I think you should read this. And I was like, dude, this is great. And she's like, I hope you don't feel offended by this. I was like, what a part of me do you think I would be offended by anything? And she's like, okay, good. So I had a profound effect on a teacher. And she rules. She's awesome still to this day.
So she had this impression of you and you proved her wrong. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I like that. A similar story with, I tell you remind me of Caleb a lot. It's true. Caleb in maybe 10th or 11th grade was doodling in his notepad, and he's a gamer and he's a dude. And he was doodling things like axes and knives and skulls and stuff like that. And was dumb enough to turn it in. And then we got called in for a teacher conference, his mom, myself, to discuss Caleb. And she was worried about Caleb because she was like, he's a quiet kid and, these drawings are disturbing. And you guys may or may not know this, but Caleb was an honor student, scout, all around great guy, great attitude, the furthest from like any kind of threat. But same with Caleb. This teacher saw this long haired kid that wore black and drew stuff like this and I think she did the right thing. She called us in as parents to discuss this with us. And of course we were like, yeah, that stuff is all over his room. And that's like, he has a collection of knives on his dresser and that's just what he's into. And again, he proved that teacher right and was always well liked by his peers and his teachers, despite how he looked. So, yeah, you influence a teacher, James. That's even better than I expected.
Lindsay?
Okay, so I managed to think of something. The last great teacher I had was Dennis Hoyleman, who was an English teacher over at Ball State. And he taught my humanities block, which is 3 courses, and you hopefully can be with the same teacher all 3 courses. Mm-hmm. And he started by telling us that the question that every piece of art has tried to answer is, he said, there's 2 questions. One is, how should I live? And the other is, how should I prepare for my death? Mm. And so that's how he started the course. And everything after that, we, studied the different periods of civilization with what literature was produced during that time period. And so he would ask us, he would always go back to those questions. So how did those writers or artists answer that question? How did they think that you should live and prepare for your death?
Wow.
So he was the first teacher I probably had that I had a lot of great teachers that taught me how to think for myself, but I thought he was one of the first teachers that really wasn't going to give you any answers or, everything. You were going to have to defend it. Like, you had to come up with your own philosophy, and he just wanted to help you form that by introducing you to as many different minds as possible. So I just really respected him because he, you had to think for yourself to be in his class and be able to write. So that really blew my mind, that he wasn't seeing himself as, I'm the teacher, I'm going to teach you something. He's like, I'm going to help you to think better yourself.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, right. Does dude still teach?
He's probably dead by now.
Oh, he's teaching in heaven.
I had the Lord of the Rings teacher, Mr. Hankinson. He taught me because we would talk. I think he's like, James is just, everyone was like, he's an old soul. So like we would just talk, and he was talking about his wife, and he's like, yeah, I don't bring anything to the table financially compared to my wife. She's an executive at a makeup company. So like that's what she does. The only thing I bring is my very good health insurance. So that's why I could technically quit and do whatever teaching job, and she'd be fine with that. And that made me realize, like, oh, you want to know what? If the woman's making more money in the relationship, that's fine. Who cares? Yeah. Because you're both working together. And I was very open, even at 18 and 17, about wanting to get a vasectomy. And he was like, oh, yeah, like, if you want to, go for it. But it was hard for me, someone with 2 children, to get one. I think it'll be nigh on impossible for you to get one, because in our area, the one guy, I wish I remembered this, the like only urologist in like Muskegon in that area.
Okay.
That dude fucking sucked. Because I went there and he's like, oh, well, I don't feel comfortable, like you might want children. But Mr. Hankinson, my guess would be it's the same guy. He's like, oh, well, you have 2 children. What if one dies, wouldn't you want another one? And he's like, no, I have another one. That would be like messed up to my child who is alive if I'm like, well, I need to replace the other one. I have one that I can still love. And if that one dies, then maybe I just wasn't meant to be a parent.
All these questions are blowing my mind because I've had a vasectomy too, and I wasn't asked any personal questions like that. None whatsoever.
In Chicago, I was prepared, like, okay, I'm going to go and I have all these questions ready to go. And the guy's like, yeah, I can't do it until like next year. Is that fine? I was like, oh, until like, so like in like 13, like in like 12 months. And he's like, no, it's December. I can get you in January. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That makes a little more sense. Cause I'm like, Yeah, they should. That sounds almost like, what we're dealing with Roe versus Wade, like getting a little too personal with these questions, just trying to get a medical procedure done. So weird. Anyway, and that's another thing. Never mind. We need to get back to these Black Roses and rock on with these kids. They finally put on their show in a high school. Another boring story. I have played bands in high schools. I've played auditoriums in high schools. They're not as weird as it seems, James. If everybody was sitting in their seats, that'd be weird. But everybody was up and doing stuff. So it was more fun than this. At first, Black Roses, when they're on stage, they kind of present like a very pure, kind of cheesy rock and roll band. They're wearing white, very accessible music, even though, what's her name from The Creature of the Black Lagoon, Julie Adams, she's got her hands over her ears like, oh, this stuff is awful. But it was very pleasant keyboard music. All the adults did the thing that we'll do. Like, we just did this recently when Charlotte got an award at Henrico County. Like, there's like 25 kids. They all got their award for like being future teachers. And then after the award, they all just got up and left. And so did their parents. And we were like, we're out of here. That's exactly what they did in this show. Like, they heard one song. They're like, okay, this band's fine. Parents bailed. Now it's just the kids in the auditorium. They take off those whites. They got on some rock and roll leather. We know they're the real deal now. So Black Roses. Any notes for these guys so far, y'all?
Crank up the vocals in the mix. Besides that, it fucking rules.
Lindsay, how are you liking their initial performance? This is their first performance in Mill Basin. So, how was their inaugural performance?
I mean, I don't have any, I guess the notes I have are about the terrible wardrobe that this band insists on wearing.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was funny that the adults listened to one song and said, well, I guess it's not that bad. Let's go get a drink, everybody.
Yeah. Like, we're all musicians. Like, if I were to play, I could play one song and they're like, oh, yeah, he's pretty good. But then the next one is debauchery. Like, that's just my discography.
And you thought for a minute they showed you Mr. Morehouse maybe was thinking about listening to one more song at least.
Right.
But
I think that's because he was getting some intense eye contact from Damien on stage. So I thought that's what was happening, is like Damien was trying to like possess Matt and it wasn't working.
Or maybe he wanted to hang out with his buddies in the photo with him.
Of course.
He's like, do I go home and drink alone, or do I stay and have a great time with my friends? I'm going to choose depression.
Yes.
I'm now going to choose the awkward thing to bring up one more thing from that school board meeting, because you mentioned the school board lady that I forgot, which is that when she was running the meeting, what she said was, let's listen to these lyrics, these depraved lyrics. And she reads them and then says, now let's keep listening. Let's do some more. Listen, this is the next one. And I don't know, that just reminded me of how people will write a whole scathing diatribe about a book that they think should be banned from a library or removed from a library. And they really go into detail. They know those stories intimately. She really seemed to want to read out loud some more passages from the song. So yeah, that's why I would think, isn't she curious, how this sounds in person? But no, they were just ready to leave after one song. So I thought that was.
Yeah, she should have been sitting there waiting for those debauchery lyrics and gauging the kids for their reaction. But she gave up on that pretty quickly.
She did.
Also, just reading lyrics, you can't get the tone of anything. People will send me like, hey man, I just wrote this verse. How is it? And I'm like, I'm not going to read this, but please send it to me when you have it recorded, because the flow could be amazing or it could be shit. Like, just, I need it to be, it's not just poetry, it's lyrical poems. So please put it to use.
All right, Black Roses are putting their lyrics to use, turning these kids into zombies. The next day at class, they are just out of it, and they cannot answer even the simplest question from our boy Matt. Matt gets upset and talks to the principal about it. They're playing chess at the principal's desk, which I like that. I didn't really have any notes about that. The next scene, though, is our big one. Is when the guy from The Sopranos, I think. He looks like the guy from The Sopranos. Did you have something, Lindsay? Of
Yes,
course. I'm
yes.
sorry.
Well, this is where the logic starts to get a little off because
Okay.
the inevitable result of this band's influence on these kids is that they turn into psychotic, murdering maniacs.
Right.
But after one night of listening, they just grow stupid.
They're in those early stages of demonic possession.
Yeah, I think what happened in that first night is like, I think after every performance, like energy is being zapped from them until the point where you can like fully possess them. I like that. That's ghost logic, I think. Like
empty them out, so they're an empty shell.
So then they're easily manipulated.
Yeah.
At this point, I was curious where the story was going because the only logical conclusion I could make was that satanic music makes you dumb, and I was like, that's not what I've ever heard. But it's just the next day they can barely form a coherent sentence or listen.
Well, it made them dumb. But when our man here, I'm not sure whose dad this is, but there's some fella's dad. It's the guy with the black spiky hair. I don't know. He was not my favorite character in the movie. Anyway, his dad
Troy,
is listening.
I think is his name. Troy.
But, yeah,
I think his
there
name
you
is
go.
Troy.
Yeah, I called him Yellow Tank Top because I love that yellow tank top he was wearing. His dad comes in and his dad just happens to be listening to some Black Roses on the stereo. He tries to turn it off. It won't get turned off. That music is possessed. The record is possessed itself. And this is the first time we actually see a monster come out of the speaker, drag the soprano guy into the speaker. He's a goner. Oh my gosh. This was a really scary scene. Were you guys okay after watching this scene?
Okay. I know you guys are probably going to comment like, oh, it's bad special effects, whatever. I think visually it is great. The sound, though, we've commented on it before. It was so like just a one note, like, but like so forward in the mix. You needed some goopiness. You needed like layers, like, oh, he's being pulled through these speakers. Make the speakers make some noise. It needed layers on it, but it was a low budget, whatever. I think that was the weird thing. If you were to have closed your ears like Creature from the Black Lagoon lady was like, I think it would have been a fine scene to watch.
Maybe. I think the easiest thing for the sound designer to do would be just to have the music be very loud.
Yeah.
That's it.
And distort it.
And
because it's
nobody
going
can
through
hear
the
him scream.
speakers.
I like how you just passed the part where you mentioned that this guy, I forgot about him. Probably the most famous actor in this movie, the guy who's in The Sopranos, Vincent Pastore, is the guy.
Is that actually the guy from The Sopranos?
Yes, he was in The Sopranos. He's not.
I just thought he looked awfully like him. I didn't think it was actually him.
No, it's actually him. He plays Salvatore Big Pussy Bonpussy.
That's actually the dude. Okay, yeah, he's a big name in the first season. That's right. Okay, Good eye, Steve. I was just messing around.
Well, also
so this was him.
That dad, you commented on Troy what he was wearing. His father also comments on what he's wearing, and he says. Yeah. He says, hey, I see you wearing an earring. There's only two types of men who wear earrings, pirates and fashion-forward gentlemen. And last time I checked, I didn't see a ship in our driveway. And you still, last time I checked, you still turn your underwear inside out for double use.
Double use.
That's what he said. He did not say any slur whatsoever.
Nope, definitely not. And I like how
but you guys must have seen a different version than me because that's not the lines that I heard, James.
Well, he couldn't have said a slur.
I saw the Peacock version. So that's kind of funny. But I thought the record itself looked pretty good and gross. And then the eating of the dad in the speaker was creatively done. I will say that because I thought, how are they going to get this guy into the speaker? And then at some point it just translated into legs. So then it became
Just a shadow.
I thought it was well done. I was like, this is as best as you could do this. But it reminded me of stuff that my friends used to do in college when they made T-Com projects. Ball State, Dave Letterman School. There's a lot of people who want to be filmmakers. So that was a big thing at Ball State. So it reminded me of those kinds of special effects.
My other note for them, besides the sound, I think they could have made it shorter. Of course, the effects were a little cheesy and all that. The design was a little cheesy. It could have been shorter, like half the time, and I think it would have been better. That was my issue with a lot of these scenes, is I think they just lasted a little too long.
Well, Steve, this was already, 87 minutes long, 83 minutes long?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you got already, if things are being stretched to that point, but it's still under 90 minutes, that means they needed to stretch to get that whatever contractual obligation they had.
You're right. Yep. I hear that. So yeah, even stranger, this next scene. This is the scene that we talked about with the teacher. The teacher's going home. For some reason, he takes off the orange striped sweater, the Tony the Tiger sweater, and to relax, he puts on a button-up shirt to sit down and relax. And I thought that was a very odd choice for like a wardrobe to chill out in. I'm thinking like a hoodie, a t-shirt's fine, but a button up, that's the way to go. Listen to some very mainstream, like classical music, like the most generic classical track you could possibly listen to. Matt's jamming to that, looking at his picture of the kids on the wall. I didn't really have any other notes until we get to the next band performance. Do you guys?
That's my next note.
Is the band performance. So we don't really see a performance here. We just see like the band backstage preparing for the performance, and they had the candle lit. The crowd is chanting, but we don't actually see that second concert. So what was your note for there, James?
Wait, okay, then maybe my next note is their third performance.
Okay, all right. Before we get to the third performance, we get to a lot of debauchery throughout the town. Like Matt drives through the town that he's grown up in and loves, Mill Basin, and he's seeing guys acting like jerks to women. He's seeing guys fighting each other in the streets. He doesn't know what's happening in town, so he goes to visit his ex-girlfriend, Priscilla. It gives him a lot of grief. Like, it's not a very fun visit. And here was my note for that visit with Priscilla. He goes there because he wants to talk to the town mayor, who's Priscilla's dad. She says, Dad's not here. Matt's like, okay, they have a fight about his teaching profession. He leaves. And then she goes to the top of the stairs and she starts talking to her dad. So I was confused by that. I didn't know if she was lying or if Matt was hiding, or if he was hiding from Matt. Either one of you guys catch that?
I think she was lying and the mayor was probably sleeping or something, because he's yelling because she says a really messed up thing saying, when we dated, I thought you would be so much more, but now you're just teaching inbred morons the alphabet. And she's like, what are you doing with your life? Priscilla, what are you doing with your life? You're just the daughter of the mayor in a small town.
Yeah, anybody who's a teacher, you can't throw that in their face. Like, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a teacher. I mean, what more do you want from me?
Maybe she's a tennis pro. She does go to the tennis. Maybe that's what she does for a living. We don't know. We're not shown that. From what we do see, she is just the daughter of a mayor in a small town. Like, being a teacher in a small town is more heroic and honorable than being the daughter of an adult daughter of the mayor in a small town.
And we see how Matt treats his students with respect.
Yes.
He's a great guy.
So much respect that he's willing to firebomb the school to protect his students from demons.
Exactly.
He's in a puffer vest Rambo outfit. This man's a saint. Yes, it's weird maybe that he has a picture of his students, but no, he loves him so much. He's like winking at him. I hope every 4 years it's a new photo with new students because he's like, hey, they're the ones that I need to mold right now.
He's got a whole collection behind that one, like from every 4 years.
But not behind the picture itself, but like literally behind him, because this is his looking wall. Behind him, hey, out of sight, out of mind, children.
Well, let's not forget that why he drove to the house to talk to the mayor is because, and Steve, you kind of glossed over this debauchery, but yes, he's seeing just random people kicking people in the street. And I really like this because it establishes that things aren't going so well in town. The tenor has changed of what's going on. And Mr. Woodhouse is worried.
Yeah, I guess I am glossing over some things. I'm looking at our time limit here, and I'm looking at how far we got into the movie, which is not very far. Some other weird things happening in town. Johnny has a mystery female figure that visits him in his room. We don't know what that's about.
Well, real quick, he threw a trash can or something. He broke the teacher's window in his car. And when he gets into bed, Johnny like gets into bed and he just like looks, he's like, man, I did good today. I smashed my nice teacher's window. It's like wild that like he's in a different movie. But then he like makes love to this lady, assuming, and then he like goes up to his dad. Is this when he does this?
No, not yet. But he is listening to the My Hometown song.
Okay,
yes. Because I think that's what the big effect is here. And before the woman comes in, like he's like James said, he's like thinking about all the great things he did that day. And then he reaches over like to like the dresser to get something. I'm like, oh no. Then he pulls a cigarette. I'm like, okay, good. He's just going to smoke a cigarette. That sounds fine.
What did you think he was going to grab?
I was a soda. I didn't want to drink any caffeine that late at night.
Oh, yeah. I think he's a diet caffeine-free Coke guy.
I don't know if they had caffeine-free in 88, but Diet Coke for sure.
Okay, well, is Tab caffeine-free?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then he got a Tab.
So not only is Johnny having a weird night, but some little kid and his dad, like the little kid is like throwing his toys in the fireplace because the music is making him evil. And he insists that his action figures are the bad guys.
Well, when did the child listen to the music? We didn't see any small children at the concert.
No, we didn't. But like apparently they seeped into like the elementary school as well because this little kid is jamming to him, or maybe his dad is. And this is what I liked is his dad looks up from his newspaper and like notices that the kid is still there and it's 11 o'clock at night. Like he hasn't noticed this kid for the past 3 hours. And he says to the kid, you're going to get me in trouble by you being awake because I didn't guide you as a parent. Therefore, it's your fault that you're getting me in trouble for you being awake this late at night. I thought that was a very strange parent tactic there.
But not a strange spouse tactic, because Nicole will say that when she oversleeps through her alarm and I'm awake. She's like, you're going to get me in trouble with my bosses for not waking me up. And now I'm going to be late. She really doesn't do that.
Okay, good. I was like, why didn't you wake her up, James? What the hell?
Well, sometimes I forget, like if I'm like, oh, I'll just keep editing this podcast until she wakes up.
Sweet Child of Time is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr helps us make Sweet Child of Time. When I schedule an episode, I send the link out to my co-hosts and whoever the guest may be. We all get in a room together, an online room, of course. We all record locally on our microphones, and when we're done, we all have individual files we can download for easy editing. You can either record video or audio. If you'd like to choose Zencastr, go to zencastr.com/price. Use the promo code Sweet Child of Time for 30% off any paid Zencastr plan. If you want to have the same easy experience I've had with podcasting, choose Zencastr. It's time to share your story. All right, we're getting some murder now. Now we're getting to the fun stuff, Lindsay. We saw some weird stuff. Now shit's getting really wild. Troy runs over his mom with the car. She's wearing some curlers, and that was it was like a Cliff Booth thing, like from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He wasn't planning on killing her, but she was in the right place at the right time, and she pissed him off, and so he went ahead and killed her. Very Cliff Booth of him.
And very Frank Booth of him.
I don't know who Frank Booth is.
From Blue Velvet.
Yes.
Dennis Hopper.
Okay, I know who Dennis Hopper is. I know that Johnny, this is the part, Lindsay, that he grabs a gun, takes off his shirt, goes up to his daddy, tells him he loves him. A lot of blood splashing upon the photograph on the wall. Thought that was very, I don't know, what was it, like an art house kind of thing? I think that's what they were going for, is like, this is the child that Johnny once was, and look at it splattered with the blood of his father.
That's good.
Yeah.
This part was the least, I felt like this was the least realistic murder that happened because by all counts, Johnny's dad was a pretty chill dude. I mean,
Very
he
chill.
wasn't telling him you can't listen to the Black Roses. He made one little comment about, is this okay? And then he's like, Jenny's doing it. Well, I guess it's okay then.
Yeah.
So it didn't really make any sense that Johnny would feel a need to kill him because Dad was just reading a paper and letting Johnny have his own life and make his own decisions. So what was the problem?
Johnny was possessed by the Black Roses. Did you see the end when Johnny was all upset? I mean, he's possessed.
But also, Johnny blames his dad for their mom leaving.
Oh, that's right. He reveals that in English class.
Yeah.
He doesn't tell us, but that's, because like to the viewer, you're right, Lindsay. His dad just seems like just kind of like, whatever. But I guess that's how he was in the relationship with the mother, too. And that's not the best way to handle it, I guess. Maybe that's why Johnny shot him. He's like, wake up, old man. Do something.
Yeah, wake up with his bullet. I just got a great idea for making sure Nicole gets up on time. I gotta go to a guns and ammo show.
There are plenty out there.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In a very disturbing scene, we see, I think this is Julie's dad, and he starts playing strip gin, not strip poker, because that's for like losers. Strip gin is where it's at. And with his daughter's friend. That's what I was thinking, too. I was like, this could be like Charlotte's friend. And like, how would I react in this situation? What the hell are you doing? What the fuck? But he would, of course, I think he ended up just having a heart attack while she was writhing on top of him. Is that what happened to him?
Maybe.
One of them was his stepdaughter.
Right. She went to bed,
And then her
though.
friend. Yeah, she went to bed. But yeah, so I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Yes.
It wasn't his daughter's friend. It was his stepdaughter and his stepdaughter's friend.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was entertaining her way too long, way too late into the night. I think this is the same guy that like let his kids stay up till 11 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
He's a bad judge of character.
Oh, I've never played gin. When do you scream, "That's gin"?
I don't know. I've never played it either.
Okay, all
Lindsay,
right.
are you a gin head?
I think I've played it before, but isn't it technically called gin rummy? Isn't that the full length?
Oh, yeah, it could be. I've heard that before.
I
I've
think
heard
you
the
do. I think
phrase.
you do say gin at some point if you do well at the game.
I've only listened to the instrumental to that Snoop Dogg song, but maybe he explains it on there.
Yeah, maybe so. That gin and juice song.
Yeah.
All right, so we got another murder scene. This is our good friend Julie. She goes to visit the principal, I think, or perhaps a therapist, who suggests that she scream out the window to like let her emotions out. Instead, she does the slip, pushes him out the window. He lands at like 2 stories down in the back of a truck. But I guess he's dead. I mean, Johnny Knoxville could definitely live through that.
Oh, yeah.
But not this principal.
Yeah, it's not Julie, but it's another girl in their class.
Oh, okay. This is the wild ad girl. That's right. There's a girl that like holds her eyes open really big the whole time, and this was her.
Yeah, because at this time, I think Julie, there's a scene that's clearly a body double of her milking herself.
Now, she's giving a breast exam to herself, James.
Okay, all right. Either or.
Yeah. That scene, well, we haven't got to that scene yet.
But I say that because you can say, like, it's whenever she takes off her top, it's framed so you can't see her face. That is probably, like, in good honor. Like, if she doesn't want to be nude, like, please do that. Don't force someone to. Especially, like, man, if I were born a woman, I would just be, I'd be showing my titties on film all the time.
On film?
Yeah. I think, what's her name? Something Quigley. She's in a lot of like B horror movies and is known to like, she's like, yeah, man, I'll show my breast because like if they pay me more, yeah, I would like that more money, please.
I wouldn't be one of those people. I think there's like different types of people who are like okay with certain things. And there's certain things that I would do on film that maybe you would not, James. But for me, like taking my shirt, even as a male, would not be one of them. I would not be comfortable with that.
Yeah, see, I'd be comfortable taking off my top, which you are not, and you would be comfortable eating with your hands on film. And
That's right. I could
not.
like pick up a potato chip and be like, yum, yum, yum. Sorry,
Gross.
James. I didn't mean to do that to you.
But guys, let's move on because next is the best scene in the movie.
What
Is
scene?
When
this
they go
where-
to the library.
That's right. Matt is looking for help and he looks up and he sees a library poster and he sees like a shining beacon of hope. And he's like, that's where I need to be, is the library. I've heard that like Lindsey Dunn usually frequents places like this. So this is where I'm going to find my answers. So
Because
yeah,
every horror movie also needs a library scene.
Uh-huh.
but there was no librarian about, which I thought was kind of disappointing. They could have had like a cool librarian in there, but I guess a shortage of actors.
Well, also, if it's at the school's library, we're assuming, he's a teacher.
Right.
He doesn't need one.
Yeah. But Julie also just wanders in and she has made a wardrobe change now. And this is also where Johnny is hanging out in the background with his arms crossed. So
Right. Yeah. I look like a cowboy back there.
this is a great scene. It's just Julie's really given Matt the what for and giving him a piece of her mind.
Mm-hmm. Is this where she's like wearing like the black lacy thing or not?
No, this is before the breast exam.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I just thought she was wearing something like provocative when she went in there to like talk to him.
Well, she's wearing like a purple satiny shirt and a black kind of pencil skirt. So it is a little bit more of an adult look than she's been wearing so far. So she's trying to talk some sense into him right here before she goes completely haywire. But yeah, I appreciated him going where, the source of all knowledge here at the library. So
Did you appreciate that big mess of books he had the books like all open at different places and like he wasn't being very respectful of the books. I'm sure you couldn't have liked that.
I mean, as long as he wasn't dogging ear the pages, then
I wouldn't put it past him because some of those books were like face down, like with the pages like spread out. Like he was like on that page, like I get to another book now. I don't know what he was reading. Stephen King? I'm not
Well,
sure.
no, he was reading like witchcraft books.
Okay, all right.
yeah, he's gonna make sense of what's going on. Like, is it something he could fight? Good call for that. So I know, Steve, you've been naming the topics, but I'm curious now if you guys have any memories of your school library.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. For me, I was best friends with Jay DeShazo, who was like a class above mine. The guy who James has heard me talk about him a lot. He's just an old friend of mine that's passed away since then. And we would both get to school early. And that was the only thing that we were allowed to do was either go to the cafeteria with all the losers or go to the library with all the cool guys. So we would go to the library and that's where we would hang out for like the first 45 minutes of every day. Pre-internet, pre-phones. So we were always looking up crazy stuff in the card catalog and just general good times. One time, Lindsay, I was kicked out of the library because I belched really loud and it was really obnoxious. I should not have done it. It wasn't anything I was trying to do. I just kind of did it and forgot where I was. And the librarian did one of these deals at me. So I got kicked out of the library. That's my my shame. How about you, James?
I think a librarian was more impactful to me than any teacher ever was because in my family, it was notorious James cannot read. And it was up until like third grade that I could read if I needed to. I could, oh, that's a stop sign. It says stop. Maybe I just knew the shape of it. Who knows? But a librarian was like, hey, like, I see you around. I know you don't really check out a lot of books, but I think she just like knew, like, I know this type and he's a boy. Hey, I think you would really like this book, and handed me Captain Underpants. And that changed my life.
Sweet.
I like that. I was like, oh, this is what books can be? Okay, yeah. And then
I thought they were boring. Yeah.
I checked that out to the point where my mom was like, oh, we just need to buy these for you, because I think I was starting to get late fees of just rechecking out every single one over and over again. And yeah, that's that in, I think no, I was already out of my second year of second grade. That was third grade that I had discovered that. How did I get out of my second year of second grade without knowing how to read?
Faking it till you make it.
Mm-hmm. That, and then in fifth and sixth grade, they had Garfield books there, so I would always go get those Garfields.
Oh, yes. Heck yes.
Mm-hmm.
And yourself, Lindsay, as a now librarian, what was your perception of the library as a kid?
Oh, well, I mean, I went to the public library a lot, and I thought their book collection was a little bit better.
Okay.
But I always remember the library being a nice, welcoming place, and I was just hoping it was the same for your experience, although I'm sad that you got kicked out for belching. I mean, it's...
That was one day of many. And I had some self-reflection after that. It never happened again.
And now I've been going to the library 1 to 2 times a week.
Oh, like currently?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, because you have been reading a lot more than you used to, because when I first met you, you weren't reading anything, and now you're a regular book hound.
Uh-huh. That's how I'm reading all these comic books. I just go to the library, and Chicago's great. All the public libraries are connected, so you get their app, you put something on hold, and from whatever library, it'll get to you.
Henrico County, same way. I have my Henrico County library card using the Libby app. Get those suckers on the overdrive. I'm good to go. I love it.
Hell yeah.
None of those books to tape, none of that audio books. I'm a real book person. Does anybody ever come to your library looking for an audiobook, Lindsay? What do you do with those people?
Oh, yeah. I love audiobooks. Are you kidding me? Sometimes they're the only way I have time to read a book now.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be that I had a commute. I don't have that anymore. But sometimes it's hard to find time to read a book. But if I can get it on tape or on audio, then I can listen to it while I'm doing workouts or doing the dishes or whatever. Yeah.
I guess I can understand. I just can't do it. I don't know.
That's how I heard Jeanette McCurdy's book. That's how I consumed that. And
okay.
Yeah, I'm glad I did it that way. I think if I had to have that mental image of what was happening, I might have been like, I don't think I can finish this.
I read the book. I'm glad my mom is dead, and I'm glad I listened to it instead of reading it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, anyway. All right, where are we now with this crazy town? We're in the library. Matt's getting some help. Julie has a point about leaves of grass. She brings up leaves of grass and why have you read this so many times? And is it because you maybe get something different out of it every time? Which reminded me of a thing that I'm really fond of saying, Lindsay, which is nobody has ever read the same book, because everybody has a different perception of the book and takes it in their own different ways. So although we might have read the same titled book, we did not actually read the same book. Everybody's reading something different every time they're reading something. Mm-hmm. I'm a strong believer in that. Same with movies too. It's just because you saw it and you took it a certain way, it doesn't mean that somebody else is going to take it that way. And a person might look at it different in a couple of years as they did previously, which is something that I find often when I reread books. I think about where I was the first time I read it, where I am now, and the difference between. Books are powerful. I love them. That's why I have a librarian on my podcast.
Well, it's the same way with any kind of art. I remember this short story, and I haven't been able to find the short story again, but it was a short story about a man who sees a painting. And he loves the painting, but he can't afford to buy it. So years go by, and he's worked as hard as he can to save up money for this painting, waiting for the moment he'll see it again. Then one day he sees the painting again and he has the money. But when he sees the painting, he realizes that it's different, but it's because he's changed, not the painting. Mm-hmm. So I thought you were going to say nobody's ever read the same book twice. That's what I thought you were going to say. But you said nobody's ever read the same book. I learned in college that when you read, there's these different entities going on. There's the author of the book, there's the reader of the book, and then there's a third perspective, and this creates context. And I can't remember what the third perspective is now, but it's there's the item itself, the person who made it, the person who's looking at it or viewing it, and the meaning changes depending on, can be, within that, the meanings can be almost endless.
I love that. You took me out of the moment here. I like that a lot. I'm going to think about that later. Now we're on the third night of the band, Black Roses, and they're singing Let's Make the Blood Sing, which sounds like a very Wheel of Time, Makken Shin type of song. And a lot of hero worship happening on stage. Did you have a note for this third night, James? This is the night, too, that they blew their faces out, and you can see they're turning into ghouls.
Okay, yeah. So when they turned to ghouls, I wrote down, I think this happened in the second night, because we've gone through a lot of notes that I'm crossing off, and I'm like, well, why is this note way up here?
We were saving it for now.
They get all wonky face. They look dehydrated. And I said,
oh, yeah.
Still better health-wise than attending a Gigi Allen concert.
Yes, hygienically as well. Right. Now is the great scene where Julie's giving herself a breast exam, taking a very long time. I'm not sure why it lingered so long. Maybe she's very thorough.
Because this is a straight-to-video movie.
They needed lots of time. That's right.
No, because then you could have rated R for nudity, and all the teens would be like, I gotta see nudity.
Why would they want to watch somebody give themselves a breast? That doesn't make any sense, James. So next up... after that scene, doesn't she go off and do something odd? I don't have a note here, but I know that
she kills her stepfather.
Right, that's very
gives
oddball.
him like a back massage, and he's like, "Oh, you are good for something after all."
Yeah, see, I was under the impression that he was already sexually assaulting her. That's kind of the vibe I got early on. So then I was kind of confused by this scene, because I'm like, oh, so like he actually wasn't doing anything. He's just a creep.
I think he was just a creep.
Okay, all right. That makes more sense then.
How many conks on the head could you take from an ashtray before you die?
I would hope I'd pass out after one, and then I'd be unconscious while they continued the beating. That's what I would hope.
See, this was, for me, the strongest, like, special effects. I thought this scene, I thought it looked pretty cool for a horror movie, as opposed to some of the other campy horror. This looked really gory, the way that they did with her, the ashtray and the blood splatters on her face.
I think the next kill would have been the most visceral, because I don't like sliced necks, but there's something very wrong about it. Do you want to get to it?
Because do you want to say more about it?
It's the next morning. Priscilla just got done tennising, and then Julie is in the back seat, and she's like, "Oh, you're the teacher's pet," and then
little girl
holds her mouth and cuts her neck, but the blood is coming out from like the hand holding the mouth. So it's like here, so like the blood should be coming out of the neck, but it's coming out from like the chin.
No, I didn't catch that. Maybe she's just a strange bleeder, you know? I mean, Priscilla's a strange lady.
Strange. I bleed from holes that aren't there when I have holes that should be bleeding.
I had two weird synchronicities recently, and one of them was this ashtray scene, because I had just watched, I'm not going to reveal the name of the show for spoilers, but it's a new show that just recently came out. And we just had watched somebody 2 nights before get bludgeoned to death with an ashtray. And then we watched this, and then we also saw someone get bludgeoned with an ashtray. So that was, nice synchronicity happening there too. Another synchronicity that happened is that Heather and myself both independently quoted Kindergarten Cop on the same day on Reddit in individual subreddits. We had both quoted Kindergarten Cop on the exact same day, which I thought that was a lot of synchronicity happening there.
I think it's weird that you and your wife like know each other's Reddit histories.
Well, I happen to talk about it because I I'm proud of myself all the time. And I was like, yeah, look at this great comeback I did. Tuma, it's not a Tuma. And she was like, I said the exact same thing on another subreddit today. That's how it comes up. You got to share with your partner. You don't share your funny posts with Nicole and like verbally tell them how funny you are.
But your wife is a doctor who like deals with like tumors, and she was telling someone like, hey, that is not a tumor.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's how her day is, all day, telling people it's not a tumor. She's a great doctor. She can detect tumors.
Well, no, I think when people see, like, cancer sees your wife and says, I'm not even going to try anymore, and they just rip on out of there.
She's a badass. What can I say? Like Matt, we see another scene of Matt here. He's going around house to house doing like burnouts and playing victory music in the background while he's checking out the scene. He talks to Julie. No, I'm sorry. He talks to some different parents, but he ends up over at Julie's house or something, or maybe his house. He is in an adorable house in a small town, and Julie walks in at some point and does some forced aggression on Matt. She's like portraying like very aggressively on Matt. Matt's not quite sure what to do, so he pulls a really like stud move when she is like, you know, down there messing with his belt area. And I think he's just standing there. And I'm like, he's just going to stand there? What is he doing? He slaps her super hard across the room, which I thought was a pretty intense move. Good. I mean, he had to stop himself from being assaulted, so I can't blame him.
Yes, which, if a teen forces themselves on you, you are allowed, and probably preferable, you are allowed to slap them.
Yes.
However, if they then turn into a stretch-necked demonoid, you are allowed to thwack them with a tennis racket as well.
Why not? Yeah, a tennis racket is the perfect weapon for one of these long neck.
They can't see it coming. It's like a bat.
That's right, yeah. And then you take a tennis ball, you shove it in their mouth. Oh, that's not going to work. That was a good try, Matt, but I thought that was interesting that they're using tennis as like the weapons here instead of like going into the kitchen with the knives. Is that eventually what he did? Is like he stabbed her?
No, I thought he just like beat her real hard.
See, I thought he stabbed her, and then I saw her later in the movie, and I was kind of wondering how she showed up later.
I think it's all mind games.
Okay. So, like, he just unconsciously beat her, and then he left her on the kitchen floor, perhaps.
No, I think this is a demon pretending to be her.
It's not even her. Okay. Yeah. That makes me feel better then, because that gives me more respect in Julie that she might make the right choices later in life. And she lived through this, too, which is good. All right. Matt runs and gets his weapons because he has a plan of, blowing things up. So he goes and gets some gas.
That he learned from the library.
Probably so, yes. He went to the card catalog, looked up G for gas.
And he just bought dynamite in a parking lot.
He probably just like from some random... In 1988, there was like wandering dynamite salesmen in every parking lot that you could pick that up from. I was confused by the gas prices because the diesel said it was $4.69 a gallon in 1988. But when he was pumping his gas, he had gotten, 6 gallons, and it was only $3 on the tank. So I was super confused by those gas prices. Did anybody else look at that?
So this is in Canada. I don't know what gas prices are in Canada. So also it's the Canadian dollar. There's different factors. It could be taxed more. We don't know.
All right. Lindsay, any thoughts about the gas prices in 1988?
This isn't anything I noticed, Steve. So I'd have to watch the scene again to form a cohesive thesis about this.
Well, you're going to have to. So you can start that up in a little while.
The only way I can jump in is because I also noticed that.
Okay. That was a very exorbitant price for diesel. But anyway, here we are at the fourth night, the big fourth night, and the fans are acting like crazy fans doing the fan worship thing. Dang. This is what I wanted to bring up because they've got the whole crowd is in on this, and Damien is like presenting himself as some like savior, worship me, my children, worship me. Everybody in the crowd is like, yeah, we do that because they're possessed. I've been in situations twice now because I'm a big fan of the band Ghost. And this is pretty much exactly what Ghost does. Ghost has a very satanic image. They're not necessarily satanic, but they're very like tongue-in-cheek anti-Christianity, where they do like, what do you call it? They present like the communion wine and wafers in a very like non-traditional way. And the singer will be on stage and like, I'm the best, everybody loves me. And everybody in the crowd, including myself, plays into it. Yes, we love you, Papa Emeritus, we'll die for you. And then we like just leave and we high five and we're like normal people. There's another magic act that does the exact same thing. Have you guys heard of Siegfried and Joy, the magic act over in Berlin? These are comedians and they do a magic act and the whole audience is in on it too. where they do like the thing with like the blanket, a big shiny blanket, and then things disappear. And so they'll do tricks where they'll make like the entire audience disappear. And all everybody does is just like duck under their seats. But it looks like the whole audience has like disappeared in their magic act because the whole audience is in on the joke. In this case, though, they're not joking. These guys are for real. They don't even really put on a concert here. They just kind of worship Damien. Matt goes on stage to stop this whole farce.
And his plan for doing that, let's remember, is to toss random gas.
Yes.
On the stage, and he thinks nobody's gonna notice that he's doing this or smell
it.
I would have smelled it immediately.
I was thinking maybe he had like some scent-free gasoline he picked up while he was at the store. I've heard of that.
Did you think it was weird at all that he just purchased dynamite at the gas station? Did that strike anybody as unusual?
Yeah, we went through that. We said there was a traveling dynamite salesman in the parking lot that he bought it from.
Just got it out of the parking lot.
I think I just didn't notice that up until this point.
Well, at my gas station down the street, they're selling weed, they're selling like bowls and all kinds of weird stuff in there. So I wouldn't be surprised they had dynamite back there too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he gets in a fight with Damien. This is where his wig gets pulled off, Lindsey, where we know for sure that he's doesn't just have like a cheesy haircut under there. He's got no hair under there. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the band pulls themselves as demons. Suddenly, Matt sees himself surrounded by like 3 riffraffs, right? They look like riffraff from, I can't remember what the movie is called.
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Is. There you go.
And one of them is the guy that you guys, the famous person, Carmine.
Oh, Carmine Apiece.
Yeah, he's one of the people who's.
Yeah, like, I mean, I was a little excited because he's played with Black Sabbath, but he's also played with some really questionable bands. And he's like definitely like a hair. I mean, I was happy to see him there. I was happy that he had a line. But he didn't really help me with, I was thinking like with his appearance and his help in the music that I would enjoy the music more, perhaps. Wasn't quite the case. The music was very campy. Let's just say it was very campy.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The weapons that Matt brings, like he pulls out a gong, like what do you call those? Like the soft mallet, and he starts hitting Damien with a soft mallet, thinking that's going to maybe vanquish the beast. A kick to the balls is what it takes, however.
Because Damien changed into like a monster.
Yes. I briefly glossed over the fact that they reveal their true forms. Yes.
This totally reminded me this part of the movie. Have you guys seen the movie It? Not the newer one, but the one that was
the TV version?
Yeah, the made-for-TV version.
John Ritter.
Great movie, except for the ending when they actually are killing the monster. It basically ends up with, it turns into a giant spider, and then the guys are just like, and that's what it is. I was really hoping that at the end, the teacher was going to save the day with like the power of Walt Whitman or something, or, some literary phrase that, I taught you guys better than this. Remember to think for yourselves or something like that. But instead, it was like, I'm just going to beat you with this mallet. And that's basically the whole thing, his plot. And then the only student he grabbed was Julie. Everybody else can just fend for themselves.
Well, he can only got arms for one person. You can't grab every kid in there, Just grab your favorite.
It would have been really good because the theme was like, hey, evil gets power through other people. Like if all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, yeah, this is one, he's not rock and roll because he just like has different hair. That's not his real hair. And then 2, like he's a demon, like a literal demon, and he's made us kill some of our family members. Yeah, he's bad. We're just going to leave. And then he's like, no, I have no power. And he kind of just like melts. That would have been really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been. I kind of like how the band like did like the Titanic thing where the band like decided to start playing when the audience was on, when like the place was on fire. I thought that was kind of a cool image. It would have been better if they were playing like an actual song, but they were just kind of like, because Matt kicked over the drum set. That's one of the first things he did was kick over the drum set. So I don't know how the drummer could do anything with that point, but they tried. Those monsters tried to go down with the ship. This is when, I don't know, we were talking about how poor Johnny was possessed. It wasn't his fault he killed his dad, because now The kids are coming out of the spell. They're upset that their parents are dead. Johnny is beside himself. Again, he should be singing like a song of grief, like, my father is dead, because he's really going into it. He's like really screaming, overacting it. I mean, performing like a champ, is what I should be saying. And I mean, Matt, he's the hero of the day. This is, I think we're at the end of the movie here. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then we see a final news report saying that Black Roses is playing Madison Square Garden, and then we just get a freeze frame to evil, and then it's over. That part, that was a bad ending.
I thought it was interesting how like he was talking to somebody named Neil, and then he said evil right after that. And I was like, if you rearrange the letters of Neil, do you get evil? Almost, not quite. It's close, James. It's 4 letters. It's missing the V. But
the ending was true to form, though, I feel like, to the genre, because in horror books, there's this sentiment that, like, the evil is to an end for the moment, but you never know when it's going to pop up again. But in this case, they actually know where it's going to pop up again, in Madison Square Garden. But
and then Britain, yes.
At least in Mill Basin, the nightmare is over for now. Except for all these deaths.
Yeah, some kids are poor orphans at this point. No Priscilla. Priscilla's not going to have to like chastise Matt anymore. So Matt might have a fresh start going forward without that, holding them back. But yeah, that's the end of our movie. Lindsey, did James turn you around like he promised he would turn us around and he would make us remember fondly this movie? How are you feeling now, Lindsey?
I mean, I think it was a terrible movie,
No!
and it wasn't even good in a campy way. But I mean, at least I can say I saw it. I can put another movie on my Letterboxd list that I finished the year.
So on Letterboxd, how many stars would you give this?
Let's see. I would, Letterboxd, you have 5 stars. I would probably give this 2.5.
Okay.
Oh, wow. That's way more than I would expect from what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, 1-star reviews are reserved for movies that I find really offensive, as opposed to not. I mean, all right, maybe it'd be 2. I don't know. It's like...
Don't second guess yourself. Don't let me do that to you.
This was clearly like people came together. They wanted to make this movie. They were having fun doing it. And maybe it didn't hit all the marks, but that's what it kind of feels a little regional horror, but not so much because it was still people in the industry going to a region, using people in that region. But it had a feel of regional horror, which is one of my favorite genres of horror. And I think I would give this a 3 out of 5.
If it wasn't for the ending, I could have rated it a 3. Yeah, because I just don't like the fact that he defeated the band by, throwing dynamite and hitting them with the mallet. It's not very creative. It's not a very creative ending. It's like, physical, just beat up on people. That's what works. Yeah. I'm like, could have done something else with it.
Are no stars acceptable in Letterboxd, or you have to give something at least 1 star?
I think you could give it like half a star.
Half a star. Okay, so if half a star is the lowest rating, I guess I would give this like 1.5. Wow, I'd go for 1.5.
This is such a watchable movie, though.
I mean, it is watchable, and I did enjoy myself at some points. I laughed aloud at some points.
Okay.
I could not get Heather into it at all. So that's a big clue for me, because she is, I use her sometimes as a barometer, and her barometer was at 0.
If I used Nicole as a barometer, I wouldn't watch most of the movies I watch.
I will say it's thanks to Lindsey over here, actually, that I've been more of a movie hound lately. I've watched a lot of movies lately, and before I've been podcasting with her, I've not been doing so. So, including this movie, this is like suggested by Jason, of course. This is not the type of movie I would watch, but me and Lindsey are interested in music movies. So this kind of did fit the genre. You were talking about Letterboxd though, Lindsey. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, we're going pretty steep here. Do we have time for any Letterboxd reviews before we head out?
All right. So I have the 5-star reviews first.
Okay. All right. I want to hear those.
So the first one is by Rob, and it says, cute, fun for the whole family. I really liked that one.
Cute.
Next is Ben Jones with a Russian middle name. Remember when satanic panic was a thing? Not the Chelsea Stardust movie, but people that consider themselves the moral barometer for society actually turned their gaze to heavy metal. The PMRC and their parental advisory stickers is classic example of this. The tribunal held to determine the moral implications on the youth of the 80s that saw the likes of Dee Snider, Frank Zappa, and John Denver team up. The West Memphis 3... They were crazy times, but it gave us Footloose, so that's all right. Speaking of which, in a mirror universe to Footloose, there's a movie about a bunch of grown-ups that were right about the sickening influence of evil music and dancing. Also about that evil head banger music, because nothing good ever came from that. And it will be produced by Troma and have lots of sleaze, nudity, and the importance of women checking themselves for lumps. At least that's what I think she was doing, rubbing her own breasts in the mirror for a good 2 to 3 minutes. And it will have hair and makeup and inappropriate homophobic slurs, and they will call it Black Roses, and it will be glorious.
And yes, Lindsay, by the way, I'm going to back up like an hour and a half. We all heard the homophobic slur. James and myself were just being cheeky.
Okay, I wondered. All right, one more excellent review here is by Kieran. What can I even say about this? Utterly amazing. Somehow knows exactly when to lay it thick on the cheese and when to show it's not just your average retro corn fest. This style of 80s camera work is something I absolutely adore, and it's executed perfectly here. Even the corniest of dialogue scenes feel electric and alive thanks to this, and there are some really cool shots to be found here throughout. The pacing as well is excellent. There are some dips here and there, but overall I was left entertained start to finish, which is somewhat of a feat considering my attention span. I also never felt as if it was feeding me too much. The ball just got rolling and never stopped. The songs written for the band alone would be enough, but the score packs a punch in its own right as well. No. If I had one complaint, the conclusion does feel kind of weak. Agreed, Kieran. Not that it was awful or anything, just that it could have ended on so much more of a bang in my eyes, even though it wasn't disappointed. So these are the 3 awesome reviews. And then I have 3 half-a-star reviews.
That last one real quick, I agree with everything besides the original score. That we all agreed was weird.
I forgot one sentence. It says, while it may not be exactly what you call high art, to me it definitely seems like a ceiling for its little niche.
Hell yeah, that's good.
It is good. Good writing.
All right, half a star by Tentacle Teapot. Boring, gross, and a total waste of a fun premise. I feel dirty and grimy after watching this. All the gnarly practical effects and demon puppets in the world can't make up for how much of this movie is wasted on underage nudity and adult men being creepy and horny about high school girls. I wish I hadn't watched this one.
I don't think these girls were underage. I think they were all in their mid-20s.
They probably were all of age if they were in this movie.
But the characters were.
Okay.
All right, and then half a star by Bo Norton. Unable to tell the difference between Julie, Janie, Johnny, Tony, or Tina, or any of the men.
Hell yeah, I 100% agree.
Or any of the men with brown Magnum PI mustaches. And half a star by Taylor Money. Heavy metal did the same thing to me and my friends back in 2002. We discovered Slayer, killed our parents, and were eventually saved by our beleaguered poetry teacher, Hale Whitman.
That last one's great.
Hell yeah.
If only. Well, yes, Black Roses was a success. At least this podcast was a success. I had a great time talking to you guys, even though we talked about Black Roses pretty minimally. But I'm glad we got to get together and talk. It's high time we get out of here, y'all. So, James, I'll let you go first with whatever plugs you got.
Hey, guys, listen to my music under Marshland Monster. Just put out a full album with Dragon Boy Suede called The Dragon and the Monster. Listen to my other podcast, like the aforementioned did I mention Death to Squids? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was before or during the record. Death to Squids and Sweaty Time Pro Wrestling. They're under the Marshland Media podcast feed. Wherever you're listening to this, you can find that. Also, Mostly Speaking Sentai. Those are the ones I'm currently currently doing. And head over to patreon.com/MLMpod, where for $5 a month, you get exclusive content every single Friday. It's Nicole, Corey, and I. We talk about movies and TV. It's a great time. Like the aforementioned Nicolas Cage podcast, Engage with Nicolas Cage. We're doing Season of the Witch. We're into his slump in the 20 teens.
That's where I picked up, though. I'm liking where you guys are at. Currently, that's my favorite podcast of yours right now is Engage with Nicolas Cage. And you got to be a subscriber to get that one, so make sure to subscribe at mlmpod.com.
Nope, patreon.com/MLMpod.
Whatever. What about oneofmystories.org? What do you got going over there, Lindsay?
Well, I just released a wonderful review of a horrible movie called The Idea of You. So check that one out if you want to be entertained. I think it was a pretty entertaining review, even though I didn't like the movie. But it's billed as a romantic comedy, but it's not very funny. And in this review, I explain why chicken fingers and cookie plates aren't enough.
Okay.
To keep a romantic connection going.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like enough to me.
I also, of course, just released a song with Intravoid, which is Wishing Well, our cover of Wishing Well. So please check that out. And I also want to plug, he's probably going to plug it, but if you want to listen to more talk about Black Roses, you can listen to Intravoid talking on the Force 5, or is it Fast 5?
Force 5
podcast with Jason Kleberg, and they talk about, you get to hear from a true fan. Jason really loves this movie. It's one of his top 5 bands of all time. So I am listening to that episode right now. It's very enjoyable. So I encourage you to check that out so you can want to support my friend Steve-O, our Intravoid over there.
Hey, I like when Lindsay plugs me. And I got to take it back. I said oneofmystories.org because I was messing with you. It's oneofmystories.com.
That's right. Yeah, I didn't say that. Oneofmystories.com or at oneofmystories on everywhere. I now have a link tree, so you can find all my links at one place. That's the number one of mystories.com.
Yep. And for me, Intravoid, I released that song with Lindsey Dunn, Wishing Well. So I'm on that too. We're working on our next thing. Actually, I'm working on my next thing with both Lindsay and James. So there'll be more music come out from Intravoid. A lot more music in 2024 than I thought I'd be doing. I'm really enjoying it. Please check out the website, sweetchildofTime.com. That's going pretty strong, and all our links are up there. I could swore I had one more thing to plug, but that sounds like enough for now. Thank you guys very much for joining me today. I'm glad you guys got to meet and podcast together. If you're still listening as a listener, I appreciate you very much. I loved you, few of you that listened to the very end. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And I hope you always find water and shade and shoes. And Lindsay and James, I hope you always find water and shade and shoes as well. Bye.
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 I wish I could remember any quote from this movie to go out on.
Something about the children.
Evil propels me.
Oh, wait. Damien. Damien.
Damien. Bye.
Bye.